Hi, I'm Scott Rolph, and welcome back to the People's Forum. We finished off talking about George Bush's support here in the United States, particularly in light of the Mideast crisis, which we've been discussing. And if you would just continue to address that. And let's start with his general support in the United States, and then more specifically, his support among Arab Americans, and how perhaps that has evolved over the course of the past 3 months.
Very good. I really don't think that support for President Bush is going to be decreased in the future because of that. Basically, because of the fact that his support has actually increased quite a bit at the beginning of the crisis, and the steps that he had taken so swiftly and so well, and the maneuvering around the United Nations that he was able to put together the coalition of countries to support the United States position has increased his popularity. So people really like that. And the decrease of popularity was only because of the budget mess that was going on in Washington. And as far as the Arab Americans are concerned, I also believe that the vast majority of Arab Americans have supported the president in this position, because even though they know that the Arab world should not be so divided, and no Arab soldier should stand with a bayonet facing another Arab soldier, but they know that there is a principle here involved, and the vast majority of Arab Americans support the president in that.
Okay. You're a good friend of King Hussein's of Jordan, and we've, through the American press, had a window into one leader in this crisis, George Bush, and some of the trials and tribulations that he's going through and leading a country in a very difficult situation. Perhaps you could explain to us what King Hussein has gone through. He's had perhaps a more trying situation because of the sympathy for Iraq in his country, and the very troubling economic position he's in. You've been in contact with him. How is he feeling? What sort of how has he evolved in the crisis to a position now where he's supporting the U.S.?
As I have been in contact with His Majesty King Hussein and his brother, the Crown Prince, and other people from Jordan, and the king has suffered tremendously during this crisis, because he feels for both parties, and he has many friends in Kuwait personally, and he supports the Iraqis in general, and he has all kinds of dealings with them, and it was very tough for him to have a position of having to choose between sides, and he also had put a great deal of emphasis on his friendship to President Mubarak of Egypt. And as the situation developed, the tension developed between the two, and the communications were almost severed between them at the time. So he really suffered, and he actually continues to suffer personally from feelings because of the situation. And nonetheless, he's a man of vast geopolitical understanding. He really does understand the geopolitical scene very well. I would always remember the fact he was telling me once that people should give him the benefit of the doubt, because he had dealt with 7 American presidents, and he had dealt with like 6 heads of states in Egypt, and in this and that, and he's been in the position where he is in power for 38 years. He said this should count for something, which is really true. So he has the vision, and he has the knowledge and the geopolitical sense, and he just gets frustrated because of the fact that his views are not accepted, or his experience is not counted, and that hurts him when the situation is, or when the difficulty is between 2 people that he holds dear.
If we do see a peaceful resolution to this crisis, will he still be in power?
I think we will not see a peaceful resolution to the crisis if it is not an initiative from King Hussein. I really don't believe anyone in the area or outside of the area has the vision, the imagination, the rapport between all of the parties like King Hussein. And today, I don't think anybody can talk to President Saddam Hussein and even make sense out of him more than what King Hussein can do. So if there is a peaceful resolution, he will be in the middle of it.
Now, what about Saddam Hussein? If he suddenly backs off because of whatever forces, he's still there as a threat. Do you think his people are going to continue to support him, or are they in this situation for the long haul until Iraq finally overcomes the resistance?
No, they are in it for the long haul. I don't really think if there is a peaceful solution, Saddam Hussein will suffer. There is a perception in people's mind here that if he pulls out, then people are going to go after his neck. I don't really think that's the situation at all, because he at least stepped in. He talked about the rights of Kuwait, and many of Iraq and Kuwait, and many Iraqis believe that this is true because of the historical problem there. In the Ottoman Empire days, there were 3 regions in the area, the land area that is now Iraq and Kuwait. There was the state of Mosul in the north, and the state of Baghdad in the center, and the state of Basra in the south, and the state of Basra included Kuwait. So during the Roman time, the Ottoman time, all of these 3 were part of what is now Iraq and Kuwait, and the Iraqis feel that since Kuwait was part of the province of Basra, then Kuwait is part of Iraq. So there are many Iraqis that feel that Kuwait really belongs to Iraq and should not be a separate country. That's part of the country of Iraq. So that because of that kind of support and because of the historical question, I mean, there are many questions in people's mind, because the royal family of Kuwait had been ruling in Kuwait for 245 years, so it is not something new. And the Kuwaitis definitely protest this connection of the Roman rule. I meant the Ottoman rule. So there is a great deal of support of Saddam Hussein's and his moves, and he's standing up and so on in this regard. So if he pulls out and if there is a peaceful solution, he's still going to be in power.
So do you think then that he'll still be a danger that the rest of the world will have to be wary of?
Not at all. I really think the strength of Saddam's forces and the danger of Saddam's machinery is much overemphasized. Egypt once had an army of 1 million men that was routed by Israel in '67 in 6 days. And the Iraqi army was no better today than the Egyptian army was then. So I think that's much overemphasized, and I think that Iraq can be, if a peaceful resolution is instituted, I don't think there will be any danger for Iraq's position. And Iraq is a country that is really looking forward to the future, for their agriculture, for their economic development, and they will not be a threat to anybody.
How has this realigned the powers in the Middle East, the situation?
There are many winds in the Middle East, and once in a while something like this happens and people said, aha, this is the final time when these people are going to ever talk to each other and so on. But the bonds in the Middle East are so tight and so deep-rooted that Arab countries can be reunited and very easily because of these incredibly deep-rooted bonds. Because Arabs in Iraq, I am sure they would not want to have to fight Arabs in Syria or in Egypt at all. So there is these deep-seated bonds can reshuffle the alliances very easily.
Independent of the Iraqi crisis, what do you think is the force that drives what we perceive as constant strife in the Middle East?
There are 2 basic things. First of all, the fact that the Arab people are so divided now in tiny little principalities and countries and emirates and so on, and all of them feel that the Arabs are not getting as much a voice in world affairs as they should. And they think back to their history, and they recognize that when they were united, when it was one voice for the whole Arab world, they had a great civilization. They were way ahead of Europe. They did marvelous things. And they see this and they say, aha, that's because we are divided and like this. And the bonds are really very deep. They speak the same language, they feel for the same things, and they feel that they have the same history and the same destiny. That is the bond that really connects them all. So they are really disgusted at the state of affairs of today when they compare it to the glory days of the past. That's number one. And so they have a gripe against the fact that they don't have enough of a voice in the world as they should, because they were once great and they could be great again. That's one. And the second is the alignment of the Western world in general towards the wishes of Israel, no matter what that did to the Arab world or to the Palestinians and so on. So that was this is the second most significant aspect of it all, and it is the one that must be resolved, and the resolution of that must come in part from the outside. For the first one to come, I think groupings of cooperation and so on between Arab countries could resolve the first gripe about their position, because there is something that's called the Gulf Cooperation Council for 6 states in the Gulf to cooperate, and there was something called the Arab Cooperation Council between Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, and Yemen. And there is the Western or the Maghreb countries council, also the Arab countries in North Africa, including Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, and Libya, and so on. They started talking to each other to have some economic cooperation, all these kinds of things. So this would resolve the first issue, but the second issue of Israel and the relationship of Israel to the Palestinians and the resolution of that problem and giving back the Palestinians the West Bank so they can establish a state and live with dignity, that is the one thing that must be resolved with help from the West.